Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to learn about C# interface. Interface is like a contract that specifies behaviors in the form of events, properties, methods. It does not specify how they should implement, but states what to implement, for example, a specific method. Whichever class decides to use the interface must implement these behaviors. Classes implementing these behaviors do not have to be related. This allows us to use polymorphism. Using interfaces allows us to group and treat objects based on their common behavior. This makes our code more modular and easier to extend in the future. Let's say we have an interface called airActivities which specifies two behaviors as fly method and glide method. Also, we have two classes, airplane and people. These classes are not related with each other as they are completely different from each other. However, both classes can implement the behavior method. Airplanes are able to fly in the sky and airplanes can glide. Similarly, people who fly airplanes are called pilot and people can glide in the air using gliders. So both airplane and people class can use airActivities interface. Even though the classes are unrelated, we can group them under airActivities and create objects related to these classes. This makes our code more modular. If we need to make another class like bird that can fly and glide, it becomes much easier. Now let's say we have another interface called speaking and it has got a speak method. Only people class can use this interface as airplanes cannot speak. We can again create a speaking type object from people class. Let's look at how we would do this in a coding environment. Let's create an interface called airActivities. In order to create the interface, we need to use the keyword interface and then we need to use the letter I, which is capitalized. This is a generic convention so that all of the other developers who are reading your code will understand that this is an interface. Once we have this letter I, then we can put in our interface name. The first letter of the interface name must be capitalized as well. This interface has two methods, fly and glide. So any of the other classes who wants to use this interface must implement this fly and glide method. Let's create a class called people. And we will say people will use the interface airActivities. So to do that, we need to use the colon mark followed by the interface name. Over here I can see a red squiggly line. It is because we have not yet implemented the methods. So let's implement these methods. So this is a simple method that will print people who fly airplanes are called pilot. So we have implemented the fly method. Now we also need to implement the glide method. So let's do that. So we have declared our method and we are simply printing people can glide in the air using gliders. Now let's create our object called flying person for the people class. Once we have done that, we will call our fly method and the glide method. Let's run this program. It says people who fly in airplanes are called pilot and people can glide in the air using the gliders. Now let's create another class called airplane and this airplane will also use airActivities. So we use the same convention colon followed by the interface name. Now we need to implement the method and this fly method will simply print airplanes are able to fly in the sky to the console. We will also need to implement the glide method and the glide method will say airplanes can glide with their engines off. Now let's create objects of this airplane class. Now we have created an airplane object using the airplane class and we will call in fly method and the glide method. Just to make things more visible, I will also add console.writeLine. This will add the gap between the prints. If we hit the run button, it will say airplanes are able to fly in the sky, airplanes can glide with the engines off. So we have correctly implemented the interface. If we look at this code, then we are repeating ourselves. We have specified the fly and the glide method over here, and we have also specified the fly and the glide method over here as well. Also, the flying person and the airplane method, they are not related to each other. And the flying person is also using a type people and airplane is using a type airplane and can only hold objects of that type. If you were to create another class that can fly and glide, for example called bird, then we would have to create the object and repeat this code again and again. The main power of interface lies in the fact that we can group two unrelated classes together via a common interface. In this case, air activities means any object that can fly and glide. So to combine the two classes by an interface, instead of specifying the type by its class, we can specify its type by its interface. So what this does is it combines unrelated class flying person and airplane to a common interface. In this case, this common interface is anything that can fly and glide. Now we can just create a method. We can call this method a flying things, and we can pass in a parameter air activities. This is the interface and this is our parameter name. We call the fly method, glide method, and console.writeLine to create the gap in the console. Now we can call this method flying things and pass in the flying person directly. And the same, we can call in flying things method and pass in the airplane object. We don't need this. Now we can see that we have deleted a lot of items that was repetitive, and we have grouped our unrelated classes. So this is the main benefit of interface. You can see we are getting the exact same results with a lot less code. There's an even better way of doing this. We don't need all of this code. I'll just delete them. We can directly pass in the list that will only accept the things that will fly and glide. So we will pass in the interface as our data type, and we'll call this thing the flying things. And we can pass in our class to create new objects. So these will create a new people object, and this will also create a new airplane object inside the flying things list. Now we can loop over the flying things and call in our fly method, glide method, and we're just using this to create a gap between the strings in console. If I hit run, then we are getting the same results. So with much less code, we have been able to achieve the same results, and not only that, we are able to group the unrelated classes by the interface. And if we were to create new class, for example bird, that can fly and glide, then all we gotta do is just add them over here, and we don't need to amend anything. A class can also have more than one interface. If we create an interface called speaking, and it will have a method called speak. Now people will use this interface, as most people can speak, and we do that by adding a comma and adding the interface name. So the people class is using air activities and speaking interface, and we would also have to implement the speak method. Since the airplanes cannot speak, airplane will not use the speaking interface. All we gotta do now is come over here and we'll create a list of speaking things that will use the speaking interface, and we will add object from people class. Now we can loop over the speaking things list and just call out the speak method, and I'll just also put in console writeLine to add clarity when we are printing things on the console. If I hit start, it correctly displays people can speak at least one language. So as you can see, we have grouped different unrelated classes by their interfaces, which enables polymorphism and makes our code much more modular. Here's a quick coding challenge if anyone is interested. Create an interface called animal with the following methods: eat and make sound. Then create 3 different classes: lion, parrot, snake, and each of these classes should implement the animal interface and provides its own unique behavior for the eat and make sound methods. Try to be creative. Let me know how you get on with the coding challenge in the comments. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Happy coding.